In the evenings, my wife would occasionally ask, "What did you do today?" "I've been with another woman." She would laugh, but it was true. I was with Elena from With the Coolness of Her Lips in Australia, or with Tamandra in Athens 2,500 years ago, or with someone else, somewhere else. That was how my days had passed ever since 1969, when my first novel was published. No writer's block, no interruptions to the flow. Every book was a bridge to the next, almost like love affairs. But now it was 2015, and my strength was dwindling. Did I have the energy to summon up the dedication and commitment that had carried me all these years? My greatest fear has always been that I might leave myself open to ridicule, write something so dire that even the gulls flying over Strömmen would snigger. I was more afraid of writing badly than not writing at all. But would I know if it was bad? Or would I terrorize my wise publisher? One can always rely on the critics, of course. I couldn't. I had been part of the literary game of Ludo for far too long to take it entirely seriously. The decision to write or not to write was too important to allow someone else to make it for me. This was about my life. Axel Sandemos, who spelled his name with KS because he didn't want a cross in the middle of it, is a writer who has won my heart and my mind. He used to say that if an author can stop writing, then he should. Sandemos had another piece of advice. One of his close friends was a painter who had lost his beloved wife and was bemoaning the fact that he could no longer paint. "Every time I stand in front of my easel, I see her face," his friend said. "Well, paint her face," Sandemos replied. I didn't have a face to paint, just a dull feeling of anxiety in my heart, an inarticulacy in my brain, as if it were wrapped in cotton wool, a kind of permanent hangover. I might be able to write about why I couldn't write, but it wasn't exactly a pressing need. It would be better to stop. Could I stop? I wasn't sure. Not being able to write is one thing. Deciding to stop trying is something quite different. When I mentioned it to my family, they just laughed and reminded me that I said the same at the end of every book. A couple of friends reacted in the same way. "Typical addictive behavior," one of them said. "Every time you get clean, you decide to stop. Then you go straight back to your drug of choice." Although sometimes it's just not possible to write. Even an author as gifted as Göran Tunström had to abandon a manuscript in the middle of his work because he simply couldn't write another line. Or a major author like Vilhelm Moberg, who chose death rather than artistic impotence. Georges Simenon used to write at top speed. A 200-page novel took him a couple of weeks. His routine was very straightforward. He shut himself in a room, his secretary provided him with food, and Simenon didn't come out until the new book was finished. One day, he followed the usual pattern. He locked himself in, and his secretary stationed himself outside the door, waiting for the familiar sound of the typewriter. Several hours passed, and he heard nothing. Suddenly, Simenon emerged, pale and haggard after the fruitless search for the first sentence. "Ça y est," he said, which means, "That's it." He had written more than 400 books, but he couldn't produce one more word. From that day on, he didn't write anything else as long as he lived. In other words, my own fear was not irrational. The more I wrote, the greater the risk that it would all come to an end. The probability of something happening increases as time goes on, and it hasn't yet happened. It wasn't coquettishness either. I wasn't expecting the whole of Sweden to fall to its knees and beg me to continue. I wouldn't be summoned to babble to explain myself. Most people wouldn't even notice. Very few people are fortunate enough to attract attention because they have stopped writing. I was under no illusions.